there's polls out, 54 to 23, Time magazine poll saying that people are in favor of the Occupy Wall Street movement. That's a over 2-to-1 margin, right? So the politicians have woken up. Oh my God, everybody's in favor of this. Let's rush in to support it. But they got a big problem because they're all funded by big donors, right? So how are they going to resolve that problem? Well, Politico has a good story on it from Robin Bravender and Anna Palmer, and they've got great quotes. So financial service lobbyists have now gone to the Democrats, and let me give you quotes. One of them says, quote, "They were livid," meaning that his clients, the bankers, are livid with the Democrats. How dare you ever support Occupy Wall Street? Because the DCCC actually sent out a note saying, hey, you should do fundraising for Occupy Wall Street. And the banker's like, don't you know who you work for? Here's another quote from a lobbyist. What are you doing? Do you even understand some of the things that they've called for? He's saying, do you understand that they've called for us to stop getting funded by you? How dare you? Absolutely not. I love how pissed these lobbyists are for the financial industry. They're pissed that we've caught on to their game, right? So one of them gives good advice to the Democrats. He says, you got to find a line here. He says, quote, "You can't have it both ways. It just makes it harder for people who are Democrats in New York, Boston, Chicago to, on the one hand, be demagogued and then be asked, hey, you can get your picture with the president for $30,000. It doesn't square." Now that's right. What he's saying is, hey, those donors in New York, Chicago, and Boston don't want to be demonized and then turn around and ask for money. Look, he's right about that. The problem is the Democrats are hooked on that money. They're hooked on that corruption, honestly. What the Democrats should say is, thank you, but no thank you. We don't need your money. We're actually going to stand up for the American people. Now, are they actually going to do that? Are they going to make that decision? Of course not. They're going to try to find that line where they can keep the money and try to get your votes anyway. So this lobbyist continues. In some ways, I think this is worse than Dodd-Frank because it is more symbolic. People from Wall Street can deal with regulation. They'll deal with it all the time. I think it's just the bashing that sort of drives them crazy. So what he's saying there is, hey, listen, man, it's one thing for us to get regulated. We know what your weak sauce regulations are. They haven't hurt us at all, right? We've been playing that game all along. But when you bash us and you let people know what the real problem in the country is, we hate that because that might actually lead to a solution of the problem. People might realize that we took out $2 trillion from the American government and gave it to the banks. Because if people find that out, well, then they're not going to be very happy at all. That's why they mind the rhetoric and the language more than they mind the weak regulation that Obama passed. So now, when you go to why Obama cares about all this, well, from the financial services industry, real estate, and insurance, that's basically the financial sector, he has already raised $3.9 million. It's about the money, Lebowski, but if you think he's doing well, Mitt Romney has raised $7.5 million from those guys. So no matter where you turn, those guys have already bought both sides. So, of course, they're going to try to finesse it, and here, Lobbyists has advice for them. Rich Tarplin, who's a financial service lobbyist and worked in the Clinton administration and for Senator Chris Dodd, so knee-deep in the connection of Wall Street and Washington, says this, quote, "I think smart Democrats are walking a fine line by trying to embrace a shared sense of frustration and resentment while keeping some distance because the protesters don't have a clearly articulated goal and the end game of the protest is unclear." He's not worried in reality that the protest is unclear. He's worried that the protest is clear. He's saying, hey, you know what? Pretend you're on their side, but don't get too attached to it because then the bankers will get pissed and I represent the bankers. Now, immediately, the Democrats follow his advice. Here's Robert Menendez, Democrat of New Jersey. He says, I don't know if I'm supportive of it, referring to Occupy Wall Street. I think what it is a reflection of a deep-seated economic anxiety that exists in the country. So I feel your pain, brother, but I don't know if I support you. How am I doing, Goldman Sachs? I'm still getting more money? Let's keep it rolling, all right? So that's what the Democrats are trying to do. How about President Obama himself? Well, he's doing a tribute to Martin Luther King, and he has this Obama-esque quote. He says, well, because it is from Obama, quote, "I believe he would remind us," referring to Martin Luther King, "that the unemployed worker can rightly challenge the excesses of Wall Street without demonizing all who work there." You see him trying to toe that line, right? Oh, I'm not demonizing you, bankers. I'm on your side. But, you know, there's a tiny little bit of excess that people are, of course, right to complain about. That's not what Martin Luther King would do. In his I Have a Dream speech, Martin Luther King called out, quote, the vicious racists in Alabama. So he didn't soft pedal it. He just said, look, the way we get beyond that is nonviolence, by working together and all of us coming together. But he didn't soft pedal who the bad guys were, and that's exactly what President Obama is trying to do. Now, he hasn't spoken out directly about Occupy Wall Street until he just sat down for an interview. Let's watch what he says there.
What I've said is that I understand the frustrations that are being expressed in those protests. In some ways, they're not that different from some of the protests that we saw coming from the Tea Party, you know, both on the left and the right. I think people feel separated from their government. They feel that their institutions aren't looking out for them.
So he says, oh, I understand their frustrations. Yeah, I mean, I feel your pain. I feel your pain. Are you going to support their causes? Are you going to do regulation that reins in the banks? Well, not quite as much. You know, he says they feel that their institutions aren't looking out for them. That's 100% right. That's what you ran your whole 2008 campaign on. You said you would change those institutions. You said you didn't want to play the same old Washington games a little better. You wanted to change the game. So, President Obama, I got to ask you, what did you do? What did you do to change the game? What did you do to change those institutions that aren't looking out for the American people? I got to be honest with you. You didn't do anything. You didn't do anything. No campaign finance reform, not even an effort, not even a bill, nothing to address corporate personhood. Forget it. I know you'd never even go halfway towards that direction. But how about a simple idea of stop buying our politicians? That's what we voted for. That was the change we were looking for, and you didn't do anything about it. So now you turn around as you continue to take millions of dollars from the banks and tell us that you feel our pain and the institutions should be changed at a later indeterminate time. Well, it's not good enough. I'm sorry. And that's why these protests are a function of President Obama, honestly, not doing his job. Because if he had changed those institutions, if he had reined in the corporations, if he had cleaned up the corruption, there wouldn't be a need for this protest. People wouldn't be so frustrated that they're out here in the streets sleeping on concrete and through the rain. President Obama, if you really want to show us you get it and that you feel our pain, actually do something about it.